At 7 in the morning, the parking lot is already filling, and the repair shop appears to wake like a machine built to print money. One sedan needs brakes, one pickup carries a warning light, and another customer describes an expensive noise with the comforting phrase, "probably nothing." Inside, technicians move quickly between lifts, tools, scanners, and parts carts while phones ring and estimates begin stacking at the service counter. From the sidewalk, the business model seems obvious. Cars break, drivers need repairs, and every raised vehicle appears to produce another profitable invoice. Older vehicles can support recurring demand for brakes, suspension, cooling systems, electrical diagnostics, maintenance, and the occasional mystery that vanishes during inspection. To an aspiring owner, this looks durable. Buy the shop, hire skilled technicians, fill every bay, sell labor, mark up parts, and collect cash. That is the fantasy because it quietly treats revenue as profit, occupied bays as productive capacity, and the owner's working hours as free. Now consider a $1,000 repair bill, the kind that makes a customer wince and makes the shop's top-line revenue look impressively healthy. The customer sees one payment, but the owner sees labor, parts, payroll, rent, insurance, software, disposal, equipment upkeep, taxes, and debt claims. Even after the invoice is collected, the business may still owe suppliers, employees, the landlord, the lender, and the future replacement of worn equipment. A repair can also return as a comeback, consuming another technician hour, another base slot, replacement parts, and customer trust without creating full new revenue. So the invoice is real, but the owner's economic share remains unknown until every direct cost, fixed obligation, and capital need has been recognized. This is the central question, not how much money enters the shop, but how much survives everything the operation must fund before ownership gets paid. A shop can be busy, respected, and technically profitable while still leaving the owner with little cash after labor, debt, working capital, and replacement equipment. The parking lot may look full, the lifts may look active, and the phones may keep ringing, but the bank account can tell another story. Imagine 4 service bays. Every lift is occupied, every vehicle looks urgent, and the shop appears completely full from the customer entrance. In the first bay, a technician replaces a water pump with customer approval, correct parts, and a clear repair plan already in motion. In the second bay, inspection is complete, but the customer has not answered, so the vehicle occupies capacity without producing authorized work. In the third bay, the delivered part does not fit, leaving the vehicle stranded while the supplier searches for the correct replacement. In the fourth bay, a comeback returns with the same warning light, consuming technician time without creating a clean, new invoice today. Every bay is occupied, yet only one may be generating fresh contribution. Physical fullness and economic productivity are not the same condition. A vehicle can sit inside for 8 hours while producing only 2 build hours, then consume space, communication, and scheduling attention afterward. The same illusion appears with technicians because paid time can disappear into diagnosis, waiting, vehicle movement, documentation, parts errors, and repeated work. The technician may remain busy all day, payroll may keep running, and the final invoice may capture only a fraction of that effort. The shop earns money only when technical effort becomes authorized, completed, invoiced, and collected work. Every missing step weakens the conversion economically. A slow estimate delays approval. Delayed approval occupies a bay. The occupied bay disrupts scheduling, and disrupted scheduling reduces build hours again. Lower build hours make rent, insurance, software, and administrative payroll harder to absorb, even while the building still looks active each week. This is why a crowded parking lot can mislead. Some vehicles produce cash, others wait for decisions, parts, labor, payment, or correction. A productive shop is not the one storing the most problems. It is the one converting the right problems with minimal wasted time. Inspection becomes diagnosis. Diagnosis becomes estimate. Estimate becomes authorization. And authorization becomes collected cash. The shop is paid for conversion, not storage. Suppose the buyer acquires an independent repair business operating from a leased building. The transaction transfers an operating company, not the property underneath it. The owner may control the business name, customer records, phone number, website, vendor relationships, repair history, employees, inventory, tools, computers, and diagnostic equipment. Vehicle lifts, compressors, tire machines, shop furniture, and parts inventory can belong to the operating company, subject to liens, leases, and financing agreements. The customer's vehicles remain customer property. The shop receives temporary custody, responsibility, and repair authorization, but ownership of the cars never transfers. The lease gives the business temporary control of the location, subject to rent, permitted use, assignment rules, maintenance duties, and renewal conditions. The landlord owns the land and building show, including the ground beneath equipment the operating owner may have paid to install and improve. This creates a structural tension. The owner invests in lifts, wiring, compressed air, signage, and customer traffic inside property controlled by someone else. If the lease expires or cannot be assigned, the operation may lose its location while the landlord retains much of the physical improvement value. The lender adds another layer of control through collateral, payment schedules, covenants, and personal guarantees tied to the equipment or operating business. Interest is paid before the owner receives a distribution, and principal consumes cash even when an EBITDA presentation makes the business appear comfortably profitable. Suppliers also hold claims on cash. Employees expect payroll, insurers expect premiums, software vendors expect subscriptions, and regulators expect compliance before equity receives anything. Ownership therefore means controlling the operating system while absorbing the consequences when a technician leaves, equipment fails, a lease worsens, or customers delay payment. The owner does not simply possess tools. The owner coordinates labor, pricing, scheduling, maintenance, purchasing, service quality, and liquidity across the entire shop. In a leased repair shop, the business repairs vehicles owned by customers, inside property owned by a landlord, using equipment that may secure lender claims. The asking price is only one use of funds because the buyer must also finance deposits, legal review, insurance, payroll, and transition costs. Equipment deserves separate scrutiny since lifts, compressors, scanners, and tire machines can appear functional while carrying expensive deferred maintenance and replacement risk. Inventory also absorbs cash, and shelves filled with obsolete components may look valuable while contributing almost nothing to current repair orders or liquidity. Working capital pays for payroll, parts, utilities, and unfinished jobs before customer cash arrives, making liquidity a requirement rather than a luxury. Lease assignment can add deposits, guarantees, legal fees, building work, and restrictive conditions that were never visible in the original asking price. The buyer may install customer deposits, warranty exposure, supplier balances, environmental records, and obligations hidden inside unfinished repair orders and open claims. Seller add-backs require caution when reported profit depends on the owner working long hours without receiving a realistic market salary for that labor. A simple acquisition model should separate the business purchase from equipment refresh, lease costs, inventory, working capital, professional fees, and contingency reserves. In that illustrative model, a $430,000 business requires $750,000 of total capital before stable operations can safely begin. The difference is not decorative. It determines how much buyer equity, senior debt, seller financing, and equipment credit must support the transaction. Borrowed money creates liquidity at closing, but it does not create revenue, profit, or owner cash. Instead, it creates required payments and contractual pressure later. A buyer who spends every available dollar on the seller may own the business, but lack the cash required to survive ordinary delays. The real entry price includes equipment condition, lease exposure, the working capital cycle, employee transition, compliance duties, and every near-term replacement need the buyer inherits. You do not purchase only a revenue stream. You purchase every obligation that becomes visible after the seller leaves and the first payroll arrives. A repair order begins before any wrench turns because the shop must first convert a customer complaint into a controlled operating process. The process starts when a customer calls, books an appointment, or arrives with a symptom that may be clear, vague, or temporarily absent. At intake, the shop records mileage, existing damage, vehicle condition, customer concerns, contact details, and the exact problem requiring investigation before work begins. The service advisor translates ordinary customer language into a repair question the technician can test, document, estimate, and explain with confidence later. Modern vehicles combine mechanical systems, electronics, software, sensors, and networked control modules, So one warning light can reflect several different causes inside one vehicle. The technician gathers evidence through inspection, testing, scan data, measurements, and experience before deciding what failed and what should happen next safely. That evidence becomes an estimate describing the recommended work, expected parts, labor, timing, and price clearly enough for the customer to decide. Nothing moves into paid production until the customer authorizes the work, because technical certainty does not automatically create permission to spend money. After authorization, the shop must source the correct parts, assign the right technician, reserve bay time, and sequence the repair without creating delays. The repair still requires completion, quality control, documentation, invoicing, payment, vehicle release, and follow-up before the operating cycle truly produces cash reliably. Every handoff can become a bottleneck because information, labor, parts, equipment, and customer decisions rarely arrive at exactly the same moment operationally. A technician may diagnose the problem correctly, yet a delayed estimate leaves the vehicle waiting while the bay remains unavailable for another job. The customer may approve immediately, but the correct part arrives tomorrow, after the assigned technician has already started a different repair elsewhere. When the owner is also under a vehicle, phones still ring, estimates wait, parts need approval, and employees still require operating decisions. The repair may be mechanical, but the bottleneck is often managerial. Successful shops move each order from uncertainty to diagnosis and finally collected cash. The most visible revenue source is labor, but the shop earns only when technician time becomes approved, billed work, rather than merely paid activity. A posted labor rate may look impressive, yet discounts, underquoted jobs, unbilled diagnosis, and rework can reduce what the shop actually realizes. Effective labor rate reveals that difference by dividing labor revenue by billed hours, exposing how much of the posted price survives operational leakage. Parts create another revenue stream, but the spread between selling price and purchase cost is not automatically profit available to the owner. Freight, returns, wrong components, warranty replacements, and emergency sourcing can consume parts margin, while delayed vehicles continue occupying valuable bay capacity inside. A $100 part sold for $170 creates $70 before labor, overhead, warranty risk, and working capital obligations arrive. Diagnostic fees compensate the shop for technician judgment, testing equipment, software access, training, and time spent identifying the actual cause of failure. When diagnosis is routinely free, the shop may transfer valuable expertise to a customer who takes the repair estimate somewhere else for completion. Additional revenue may come from maintenance, tires, fleet accounts, sublet work, shop supplies, or lawful disposal fees, each carrying distinctly different economics. Labor revenue is not labor contribution. Parts revenue is not parts profit. An invoice is not collected cash, and a deposit is not always earned. A large repair order can look attractive while tying up expensive parts, uncertain labor, and bay capacity for days, increasing both delay and comeback risk. A smaller maintenance job may move quickly, use predictable parts, and create stronger contribution per hour, even though the invoice appears less impressive. Repair order count, average ticket, and total revenue each describe activity, but none alone shows how efficiently the shop converts scarce capacity into cash. The useful revenue formula begins with billed hours times effective labor rate, then adds parts and lawful ancillary sales before subtracting discounts and refunds. Revenue starts when the customer says yes, but owner economics begin only after every invoice is dismantled into direct costs, timing, and contribution. Revenue enters the shop, but parts suppliers are paid first because every component installed has an acquisition cost before any gross profit exists. Technicians are paid for skilled labor, and payroll taxes, benefits, workers' compensation, training, recruiting, and turnover add further costs behind each billed hour. The service advisor, scheduler, bookkeeper, and administrative support also require compensation, even though their work rarely appears as a separate customer charge. The building sends its own bill through base rent, common area charges, utilities, maintenance duties, and rent increases that continue regardless of daily volume. Electricity powers lights, compressors, diagnostic equipment, heating, cooling, and tools, while water, internet, security, and cleaning remain necessary operating costs every working day. Insurance protects against property, garage, liability, workers, and customer vehicle risks, but premiums must be paid whether every bay is productive or not. Software subscriptions, diagnostic databases, payment systems, accounting tools, and vehicle information access quietly create recurring costs that expand as technology becomes more complex. Used oil, fluids, filters, and regulated waste require storage, handling, documentation, and disposal, making compliance an operating cost rather than an optional expense. Marketing, payment processing, uniforms, small tools, cleaning, and professional services may look minor individually, yet together they absorb a meaningful share of contribution. Interest is the price of borrowed capital, and it must be paid before equity receives a distribution from the operation each month. Principal repayment also consumes cash, even though it does not appear as an operating expense in EBITDA or the income statement presented to buyers. Lifts, compressors, scanners, computers, entire machines eventually require major repair or replacement, so sustaining capital must be reserved before owner distributions. Working capital absorbs cash through inventory, receivables, prepaid insurance, refunds, warranty obligations, and unfinished repairs that have not yet converted into collected money. Finally, the owner's own labor must be valued when that person works daily as technician, advisor, manager, purchaser, controller, and complaint department. Everyone else is paid according to contract. The owner receives what remains, which makes residual ownership both the final reward and the final risk. To understand the shop, begin with one service bay, which appears productive but cannot create revenue without coordinated labor, approval, parts, and equipment. The bay needs a vehicle with authorized work, a qualified technician, the correct parts, usable tools, and a customer prepared to pay. Average repair order divides net revenue by repair orders, showing ticket size without revealing whether each job used capacity efficiently or produced strong contribution. Build hours per repair order show how much labor the shop sells with each job, separating quick maintenance from complicated, capacity-heavy repairs. Effective labor rate divides labor revenue by build hours, revealing what the shop actually realizes after discounts, underquoting, and unbilled diagnostic time. Technician productivity compares build hours with paid working time, exposing how much payroll becomes customer-approved work rather than waiting, movement, or correction. Bay economic utilization measures how much available bay time becomes productive, billable work instead of storage, parts delay, approval delay, or comeback activity. Parts gross profit subtracts parts cost from parts revenue, while contribution per build hour measures what remains after the direct costs of producing that hour. Comeback cost includes uncompensated labor, replacement parts, customer recovery, and occupied bay time that prevents another repair from using the same capacity. A service bay is therefore not an independent revenue machine. It works only when the vehicle, technician, approval, part, and payment process align. In our illustrative 4-bay model, 3 technicians each produce 4.8 build hours per day, with labor and parts generating substantial revenue. After technician payroll, direct costs, rent, and overhead, the operation appears healthy, but financing, replacement capital, working capital, and owner labor still remain. Using the stated assumptions, owner cash break-even occurs at roughly 4.5 build hours per technician per day, not at a full parking lot. Reduce productivity by 1 build hour per technician per day, and fixed rent, insurance, software, and debt remain nearly unchanged while owner cash falls sharply. The scarce asset is the coordinated hour when lift, technician, correct part, customer approval, and payment align. That is what the shop truly sells. The owner trap begins when every operational gap is solved by one person working longer, faster, and for less than a market replacement. When a technician calls out, the owner enters the bay, turning management time into repair labor while estimates and scheduling begin to wait. When the service counter falls behind, the owner answers phones, explains estimates, handles complaints, and quietly becomes the shop's emergency staffing plan. After closing, that same owner orders parts, reviews payroll, checks cash, approves refunds, and prepares tomorrow before the business can supposedly rest. Reported profit can therefore include unpaid owner labor, because the income statement records expenses paid by the business, not hours donated by equity. Normalize a market salary for those duties, and the apparent earnings may shrink before debt, replacement capital, working capital, or distributions are considered. A 70-hour owner week is not automatically superior economics. It may simply conceal 2 jobs inside one person and one misleading profit number. Growth can deepen the trap because more technicians, vehicles, parts orders, and customer promises create more coordination decisions before they create managerial freedom. The owner then becomes the single point connecting diagnosis, pricing, purchasing, scheduling, quality control, payroll, liquidity, and customer trust across the shop. If that person becomes ill, takes vacation, or simply stops answering, approvals slow, cash collection weakens, and operating knowledge disappears from daily decisions. Hiring a manager can reduce owner dependence, but the salary arrives immediately, while better systems, delegation, and productivity may take much longer to develop. Seller discretionary earnings may look attractive because they add back owner compensation, yet a buyer still needs someone to perform the owner's actual work. Large owner withdrawals can also mislead when maintenance, taxes, working capital, insurance renewals, or equipment replacement have merely been delayed into the future. The decisive distinction is whether ownership produces cash after paying replacement management, or whether the buyer has purchased a demanding job with financed equipment. A transferable business survives the owner's absence. An owner-dependent shop may stop converting work into cash the moment its central operator steps away. Failure rarely begins with one dramatic event. It starts when small delays compound across estimates, parts, scheduling, repairs, billing, and collection. A slow estimate delays authorization, leaving the vehicle in a bay and forcing the next approved job to wait outside. That waiting job disrupts technician sequencing, lowers build hours, and makes payroll harder to absorb across the same fixed operating day. Lower build hours reduce contribution, but rent, insurance, software, utilities, and debt remain due on schedule, regardless of operational friction. Cash pressure then encourages shorter staffing, delayed maintenance, smaller inventory buffers, and postponed training, each decision making future work less reliable. A poorly maintained lift fails, removing one bay from production, while repair costs arrive exactly when liquidity is already weakest. The remaining bays become crowded, technicians move vehicles more often, and every additional handoff creates another opportunity for delay or error. Under pressure, estimates become less precise, jobs are rushed, quality control weakens, and comeback probability rises across the shop. A comeback consumes unpaid labor, replacement parts, bay time, and customer recovery, turning yesterday's revenue into today's operating loss. Repeated comebacks damage trust, so the shop discounts work, spends more on marketing, and handles more complaints to replace lost demand. Lower realized pricing and higher acquisition cost shrink contribution again, tightening the same cash pressure that created the original shortcuts. Employees experience the instability directly through schedule changes, missing tools, delayed parts, rushed work, and constant customer escalation. Strong technicians leave, recruiting costs rise, training restarts, and the remaining team carries more work with less shared operating knowledge. The owner then fills every gap personally, reducing management time and pushing the business deeper into the dependence it needed to escape. The failure engine is circular. Delay reduces cash, cash pressure reduces capability, reduced capability creates more delay, and ownership absorbs the compounding loss. The downside is rarely one isolated problem. It is several ordinary risks arriving together while the owner has limited cash and time. A lead technician can leave with diagnostic knowledge, customer trust, and productive capacity, forcing the shop to recruit while revenue immediately falls. The landlord can raise rent, refuse assignment, or decline renewal, turning a healthy operating business into a relocation problem with expensive fixed improvements. A major lift, compressor, scanner, or alignment system can fail, removing capacity and demanding cash before the replacement produces a single invoice. A supplier disruption can delay essential components, strand vehicles inside bays, increase emergency sourcing costs, and weaken promised completion dates across the schedule. One damaged customer vehicle or disputed repair can trigger rework, refunds, insurance claims, legal expense, and reputational loss beyond the original invoice. Environmental or safety failures can require cleanup, equipment changes, documentation, and interrupted operations, even when no revenue-producing repair caused the expense. A fleet account can provide steady volume, but concentration becomes dangerous when one payer delays invoices, renegotiates prices, or moves work elsewhere. Consumer demand can weaken when drivers postpone non-critical repairs, while essential failures remain unpredictable and customers become more sensitive to estimates in financing. Wage pressure, insurance premiums, rent, software, utilities, and borrowing costs can rise together faster than the shop can adjust realized pricing. Debt amplifies every shock because principal and interest remain scheduled, while bays are idle, customers delay payment, and replacement equipment consumes additional cash. In an illustrative downside case, slightly lower productivity, weaker pricing, and one equipment failure can erase owner cash without eliminating reported revenue. Reserves do not prevent failure, but they buy time to repair equipment, retain employees, honor customer obligations, and avoid desperate operating shortcuts. The strongest defense is not optimism. It is diversified customers, documented systems, maintained equipment, lease visibility, insurance discipline, and realistic liquidity. Ownership absorbs the downside after employees, suppliers, landlords, lenders, and customers enforce their claims, which is why residual reward requires residual risk. Owner cash begins after operating profit, not at revenue, and not even at EBITDA, because financing, taxes, capital, liquidity, and owner labor remain. EBITDA removes interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, but it does not remove the shop's obligation to pay principal or replace worn equipment. Taxes claim cash after taxable income is calculated, and timing differences can create payments that arrive when the operating month already feels weak. Debt principal reduces the loan balance, but it also reduces available cash, which is why financing structure changes owner economics without changing shop revenue. Sustaining capital funds lifts, scanners, compressors, computers, and other assets required to preserve current capacity rather than create optional expansion. Working capital absorbs cash when parts are purchased, payroll is due, refunds remain possible, or invoices have not yet converted into collected money. Normalized owner labor subtracts the market cost of replacing the owner's daily technician, advisor, manager, purchasing, and financial control responsibilities. Reserves hold cash inside the business for equipment failure, insurance renewals, tax payments, customer claims, payroll disruption, and ordinary operating surprises. A distribution is economically available only after those obligations are funded, not merely because the checking account contains money on one particular afternoon. In the illustrative model, reported operating profit becomes much smaller owner cash after debt service, sustaining capital, working capital, taxes, and normalized owner labor. Timing matters because customers may pay after parts and payroll are funded, creating a profitable repair order that still produces a temporary cash shortage. Monthly owner cash can swing even when annual revenue appears stable, because equipment repairs, insurance, taxes, payroll calendars, and collections rarely align evenly. Cash conversion improves when estimates are authorized quickly, parts are controlled, repairs finish predictably, invoices issue promptly, and payment collection follows without delay. The practical formula is operating cash before ownership minus taxes, principal, sustaining capital, working capital needs, normalized owner labor, and required reserves. What remains is distributable owner cash, the residual reward for controlling the system after every stronger operating and contractual claim has been funded. The upside begins when the shop improves conversion, not merely traffic, turning more existing demand into authorized, completed, collected work with less friction. Faster estimates shorten approval time, reduce bay dwell, improve scheduling, and allow the next vehicle to enter productive work sooner. Better parts verification reduces wrong orders, emergency freight, returns, and stranded vehicles, protecting both parts margin and technician sequencing. Clear technician specialization can improve diagnostic accuracy, workflow speed, and first-time completion when assignments match skill, tools, and repair complexity. A strong service advisor improves communication, estimate clarity, authorization speed, and customer trust while protecting technicians from repeated interruptions. Reliable shop management systems make workload, part status, promised dates, invoices, and collections visible before small delays become operating surprises. Diversified fleet and retail customers can stabilize demand without allowing one payer, one contract, or one pricing relationship to control the business. A balanced mix of maintenance, diagnostics, and larger repairs can smooth workflow when each job is priced, scheduled, and measured by contribution. Pricing discipline raises realized economics when labor rates, diagnostic charges, parts policy, and discounts reflect complexity, risk, and scarce capacity. Consistent quality control reduces comebacks, protects customer trust, preserves bay availability, and prevents yesterday's invoice from becoming tomorrow's unpaid repair. Preventive equipment maintenance protects productive capacity by addressing wear before a lift, compressor, scanner, or tire machine unexpectedly stops the workflow. Documented procedures reduce key person dependence, shorten training, improve delegation, and make the operating system more transferable beyond the current owner. Lease visibility improves when renewal options, assignment rights, maintenance duties, and improvement ownership are understood before capital is committed to the location. Debt reduction and stronger reserves widen the space between contractual claims and owner cash, making ordinary shocks less likely to force destructive shortcuts. The upside is conditional. Owner cash expands when the shop converts coordinated capacity with less delay, rework, dependence, and capital leakage. So when does an auto repair shop become an attractive ownership asset? Only when the system works without consuming the owner entirely. The first condition is technical capacity that survives turnover, supported by documented diagnostics, training, quality control, and more than one indispensable technician. The second is commercial discipline. Estimates are clear, pricing reflects complexity, discounts stay controlled, and customers approve work without unnecessary delay. The third is operational visibility, so the owner can see base status, parts delays, technician loading, promise dates, and collection risk early. The fourth is capital honesty. Acquisition price, working capital, debt service, sustaining equipment, taxes, and reserves are funded before distributions are celebrated. The fifth is a defensible lease, with enough term, usable assignment rights, understood maintenance duties, and protection for location-specific improvements. The sixth is customer diversity, because a busy shop dominated by one fleet, one payer, or one referral source remains fragile. The seventh is quality that reduces comebacks, protects trust, preserves technician morale, and keeps yesterday's invoice from becoming tomorrow's free repair. The eighth is management depth, where decisions can continue when the owner is absent, tired, sick, or simply working on strategy. The ninth is liquidity, because a profitable shop can still fail when payroll, parts, taxes, or equipment claims arrive before customer cash. And the 10th is verified owner cash after replacement labor, debt principal, sustaining capital, working capital, taxes, and realistic reserves. If those conditions hold, the owner controls a durable, local operating system with recurring demand, specialized knowledge, and transferable customer relationships. If they do not, the buyer may acquire revenue, equipment, and responsibility while purchasing little more than an exhausting financed occupation. The verdict, therefore, depends less on the number of cars outside than on the quality of conversion, resilience, and residual cash inside. A strong shop earns the right to distribute cash only after proving it can maintain capacity, trust, and control through ordinary disruption. At the end, the owner does not possess a building, a lift, or an invoice alone, but a complete system of coordinated obligations. The landlord owns the property, the lender owns contractual claims, employees own earned wages, and suppliers own payment rights before equity receives anything. Customers bring revenue, but their deposits, approvals, complaints, and payment timing can all create obligations before that revenue becomes economically earned. A full parking lot can hide idle bays, delayed parts, unfinished estimates, unpaid invoices, and owner labor that has not been economically recognized. A quiet shop can also be healthier than it appears when scheduled work, disciplined pricing, strong systems, and available capacity protect future conversion. The apparent asset is the repair shop, but the real asset is reliable conversion from uncertainty into diagnosis, authorization, repair, trust, and cash. That conversion depends on people, equipment, information, property access, customer permission, supplier reliability, and enough liquidity to survive timing differences. Remove any one of those elements, and the same four-bay building can become storage space for vehicles, obligations, and increasingly expensive delay. Reported profit can rise while owner cash falls when debt principal, equipment replacement, working capital, taxes, reserves, or normalized labor are ignored. There can grow while the business becomes weaker if growth increases rework, concentration, owner dependence, capital needs, and contractual pressure faster than contribution. The strongest ownership case appears when systems transfer, employees stay, customers remain diversified, equipment is maintained, and cash survives ordinary disruption. The weakest case appears when the owner must personally supply every missing decision, skill, relationship, dollar, and hour required to keep revenue moving. So the final verdict is conditional. The shop is valuable only when residual cash remains after replacing the owner and protecting the operating system. The final paradox is simple. Ownership gives the last claim on success because it also carries the first responsibility for failure. You do not truly own the revenue. You own the responsibility for everything that must be paid before any of it becomes yours.